So for when we're talking about the Steelers defense going up against the Ravens, obviously with the Ravens offense, number one, it starts with Lamar. We know, I mean, he's the reigning MVP for a reason, man. He is extremely dynamic, even with this being a quote unquote down year for him, which, I mean, when you think about what he did last year, it's kind of hard to replicate that. So technically anything would be a down year from
there was some stats though up to week, what is it going to be, 7?
Week 8 now.
I think through week 6 or through week 6 through week 7 or through the first 6 games, whatever it was, that his numbers are actually really similar to his first 6 weeks last year. So I mean, I don't know. There's some things I was looking up, some like Ravens talk and everything that they would say that they think his play took a little downturn this year. Like maybe there's some picks that have been dropped or whatever. But I don't know, dude. I think the games that I just randomly see or have been even rewatching here. Yeah. I think he looks fine, in my opinion.
No, he definitely looks fine. It's more of a numbers thing. People will talk about just his total offense yards. So typically last year, I think he was averaging around 288, 290. This year, he's around 240. But I think the biggest thing is just they're been ahead in pretty much all their games, man. And it's just a different style once they have that lead in terms of how they operate, in terms of not having to be as aggressive. And they just have one of those offenses where it just churns time. But on top of that, when you factor in some of these penalties, and that has really killed a lot of their drives as well, taking points off the board, taking yardage off of them, I think that kind of plays into it as well. That's why we always say, like, you can't just read the stat sheet, right?
They've had a lot of drops too.
Yeah.
Especially in that Chiefs one. Like I said, that was a close game, actually. If Andrews doesn't drop the touchdown, there were a couple other ones. But it was just Mahomes making those big plays, like I kind of mentioned, that really made the gap.
But, and it's funny, you talked about that game, but just think about in general. I mean, we saw Brady and them lose week 1 against the Saints, and people were Father Time this, Brady has done that, and now look at them.
They just don't understand the game.
Right. That's the thing. It's like, man, you just because you have one bad game, that don't mean you done it. And if you really look at it, it's a lot that goes into these performances looking good or bad and things like that. We always say, I mean, this is one of the things as an athlete we'd always talk about. It's never as good as you think it is, and it's never as bad as you think it is. And typically when you watch the tape, that it holds true. I mean, throughout my college career, professional career, some of the best games I thought I had, I go in there, you're like, oh, all right, I'm gonna just go home today. Don't even interview me no more.
You were just in the moment there. You didn't really realize.
And then you got times where you like, bro, I stunk it up. This is probably my worst game ever. You walk in, you're like,
was it that bad?
It wasn't even that bad. I was all right. So it happens, man. It definitely happens. But going back to the Ravens offense, man, number one, like I said, it starts with Lamar. I mean, when he is able to extend plays and create, that's when he's at his best, when he's able to have his feet set and ultimately play to his pace, which is key. Him playing at his pace, even though it still looks fast, is controlled for him. You can see he looks under control. He runs into problems once he's playing faster than he needs to, or faster than he wants to. His footwork gets out of whack. His throwing motion gets out of whack. Absolutely. The pressure is big in that. When he isn't able to play at his pace, when his footwork isn't where it needs to be, he struggles. He misses on a ton of throws, and they're usually high. And it's not crazy. It's not like these crazy outlandish misses, but it's like it's supposed to be in the chest work and in the framework of their chest. A lot of these are high, even though they're hitting these receivers in their hands. When they're outstretched the way they're having to outstretch, that isn't good. That's not very accurate. But a lot of those throws are directly related to his footwork. Very similar to when we talk about Josh Allen. He's another guy. When we talk about guys who have strong arms, but accuracy isn't a natural thing for them, you have to make sure your footwork is key. You have to make sure that your throwing motion is going through and doing exactly the same thing every time. He still has some inconsistencies with that, and a lot of his misses are related to that. And for me, I'm excited because obviously with our defense, long overthrows don't fall harmlessly to the ground. Passes that are tipped off of hands don't fall harmlessly to the ground. And that happens a lot on his passes. And we know with our secondary, they capitalize on that. Another thing that we know about, we said with Lamar is what? Man, when you make him have to move around, right? When you're able to pressure him, our defense creates pressure multiple ways, whether it's through our interior D linemen, our edge guys, blitzing, inside or outside blitzing, whether it's Vince or it's a nickel corner. We have all of that in the repertoire. So that's the thing that I think is really good, because when you look at their receivers, Willie Snead and Hollywood Brown, they're not going to scare you like that.
Nope.
Obviously, Mark Andrews is a touchdown machine. He generates points. He does do that. And their offensive line, I think, is good, but they're not how they used to be. And ultimately, the running game, I feel like with the way our run defense is, I'm not really concerned about that. But it is a different challenge, though. And I don't want people to just think, well, they stopped Derrick Henry. Oh, just repeat process against Baltimore. Totally different.
It's
Whatever
different.
you did versus Tennessee, throw it away. It has zero to do with this week because some of the backside tackles that we saw TJ and Bud have where they were unblocked and flying in, you fly in like that against Baltimore, Lamar's pulling that ball and hitting his head on the goalpost. We have seen that too many times. Even Philly, man, we saw him run one, hit his head on the goalpost. So that's the only thing, man, that concerns me because you're going to have to take that aggression that the Steelers do play with on defense and taper it down a little bit and understand this is more fundamental. This is, think of just the high school option. Like it's an option team. They're just doing it out of the gun and sometimes out of the pistol and things like that. But you can't just fly back there because those are the type of offenses that will hurt you against an aggressive defense like that. So that's my only, I guess, big concern. I feel like from as a whole, though, I think the defense has been communicating a lot better, especially lately. And we're not seeing as many mix-ups, not as many blown coverages. And I think that's going to continue that number of mess-ups and missed tackles and things like that are going to continue to decrease now that the season is continuing to keep going. And I just see it where I just think they match up extremely well against Baltimore.
Yeah, dude, it's interesting because, like I said earlier, with all the hype, clash of well, I guess you could say this is the real clash of the Titans here as opposed to the Tennessee Steelers. I mean, I feel like with this rivalry and everything, the story here, this is probably the bigger game. As much as last week was a big game, this is probably the bigger game. I feel really good about our defense versus their offense, and it goes back to us playing the Texans, us playing the Eagles, actually. I think the main goal in both of those games, we talked about this, was like, can we contain Deshaun Watson? Can we contain Carson Wentz? Because they're going to be the ones that are making things happen. We're not too concerned about their receiving core, how's their running game. And in this case, if you look at Lamar and their receivers, like that's what it's going to be. I think Lamar is definitely better than Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz, so that's going to be more of a challenge. But you brought it up. I don't think there's really anyone in their receiving core that worries me because what worries me is the big plays and someone getting behind our secondary and him bombing one up for like 50, 60 yards. They don't really do that with Marquise Brown. I think there was like 2 times he had a pass that was like over 35 yards, and one of them was Lamar running around in the backfield and making stuff happen, and then Marquise Brown coming back and then making the play. So I just don't really see it there. So now we go to the running game, and you mentioned this. It's just a whole different thing because the Ravens' running game and just how they operate with the option and just their system is way better than the Texans and Eagles.
Yeah, it's not even close, man.
So we do have the harder matchup in terms of trying to contain Lamar versus Carson Wentz and Deshaun Watson there. Receivers, I guess you could say across the board, maybe it's equal. We learned after the Eagles how good this Fulgham guy is. Like, he kind of carved us up. But, like, that's what I'm saying. The Ravens don't have a guy like Fulgham.
So this is the only thing that I feel like people fall into the trap when we talk about Ravens offense. We understand they run spread offense, right? Very college, like in terms of the zone read. And from there, we forget the zone read element of it and just think, okay, well, after that, man, they're trying to air it out downfield. That's not their game. Mark Andrews is their guy. That's the one they want to feature. And when you watch them, he's the guy they're trying to, that's option number 1 in the pass. And then from there, he works to Hollywood and Willie Snead. It's weird in terms of him. It's almost like he works backwards in his progressions. Like with Ben, he's going deep, intermediate, short, right? The tight end or the check down is like the last option. With Lamar, the tight end and the check down is like the first option. And then, all right, if I move around a little bit and somebody comes open late, then I'm going to take the shot. How often, just think about with Lamar, how often have we really seen him just drop back? Oh yeah, 1,000, 1,002. Now I'm taking this shot downfield. He can do it.
I saw the drop with Mark Andrews that one time with the Chiefs, but yeah, it's not.
It's not what they. That's not what they
at
do.
A high frequency,
right?
Correct.
And a lot of it is kind of similar to Tennessee in terms of off of fakes, off of run fakes, run actions. Now they want to take their shots. The difference is it just looks different because they're doing all theirs predominantly out the gun, whereas with Tennessee, it's under center, so it's already defined when they're trying to go play action pass.
That's a good point because their one big play literally happened on like a slant. There wasn't anything at one point where they were bombing it down there, but that's what killed us in the Broncos game and the Eagles is these dudes just have this air raid offense and they're bombing it. So And then, so we contained the dudes that I mentioned, like,
Right.
all right, we got to stop Deshaun, we got to stop Carson Wentz, because they're going to make things happen in the backfield and kind of just create opportunities. So we did that. Lamar's going to be the harder matchup. I think we're going to be able to do it for sure, because one, we did it last year.
It was
the first
5 sacks, 3 interceptions.
Yeah, 3 picks.
turnovers. Yeah, 3 picks.
They looked a lot. Well, we both rewatched the game. They looked a lot better in the first half, and I was like I said, I was surprised as I'm watching this. I'm like, how did we like take this to overtime? But we did a lot better job in the second half containing Lamar.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the turnovers help, but like, I don't know how much you want to say, like, a couple of those were even fluky. The one, like, hit Mark Andrews off the chest. But like you said, it was a little bit off. It wasn't perfect. And then we got it. It was one of those, like, tip things.
Yeah.
And then the Devin Bush one, it, like, went
crazy. Watching that again was like, how? I still don't know how it worked out.
Like, I would say his only bad, like, really bad pick was the one to Mike Hilton right before halftime. That was, like, right to him. Yeah. So we were able to contain Lamar last year. We contained quarterbacks that have a similar style to Lamar, just in terms of, like, the offense goes through them. They can make things happen. So then the real concern is the running game. We haven't faced a running system like this because it's so unique.
Yeah, it's different.
But we've been successful against the run, so I'm just going to lean on that, hoping that we could replicate it this week, even though it is going to be a little bit different. So I feel good about defense.
The only thing that makes me nervous about our defense is Mark Andrews versus our linebackers right now, whether it's Vince Williams, whether it's Robert Spillane, or even if they try to use Ulysses Gilbert. And the biggest thing is this. Number one, Spillane and Vince can't run with Andrews on that type of level. Gilbert can, but if you're going to have Gilbert out there to that extent, he's going to be asked to do a lot more when it comes to the run game. And right now, he just, from the coach's perspective, or at least that's what I'm assuming, because how they're using him exclusively on third downs, is something that he's not doing enough of when it comes to the run game. So that's why they haven't been using him in that avenue. So that's my only concern, is how are we going to combat Mark Andrews? Because we could sit here and talk about this run game, and if Vince and Spillane get to just play downhill and not have to worry about the pass, I think they'll shut the run down with no issues. But the problem is, you fly down against Baltimore, that tight end is just trying to get past your depth. That's it, just past linebacker depth. So you're deep enough. So you're behind the linebackers, but you're shallow enough that the safeties, they're not going to be bothering you and things like that. That's what concerns me the most, because we have seen them being able to move the ball, and they don't mind being methodical either. They'll put together 10-play drives like it's nothing. They do that.
It's similar with the Steelers and Ravens.
Absolutely.
From that aspect,
that's what I was saying. Like, this is identical. I just feel like we have more talent, but the way we go about doing things, there's a reason why both of these organizations are where they are. They are very similar in just terms of structure, in terms of how they're run from top to bottom, philosophies and things like that. And that's why this matchup is always big. That's why these teams are always in the mix. And that's why I feel like, it's just always fun when you get Steelers and Ravens, man. But that to me is my biggest concern, man. Just how are our linebackers going to respond to Mark Andrews, especially because we play a ton of man too. And that's the thing. It's like they're going to be put in some of those situations, some of those positions. How do they stand up to it? If they can stand up to it and they do that good for the majority of the game, I don't think it's an issue.
Would you be bringing this up if we had Bush? Like,
I still would.
The concern level wouldn't be where it is right now, though.
Put it like this, I still would be, because even this season, right, with Devin Bush before he got hurt, we talked about how when when Jeff Driscoll started to focus on Noah Fant, Noah was a problem for Devin. It wasn't oh yeah, man, he's locking him down. Like, no, we talked about how in the second half, we was like, man, we're glad that he waited this long to start keying in on the guy. Mark Andrews is in that same type of vein in terms of what he can do from a receiving standpoint and scoring points, especially in the red zone. So even with Devin, I felt a little bit more confident, sure. Yeah. But you still know, like, hey, man, not too many linebackers specifically are shutting down Mark Andrews. That's the only thing with that. So that would be, I would still have that concern. Okay. I just feel like as a whole, though, man, shutting down the run, it's weird to explain it. I feel like you have to minimize Mark Andrews before you can get to the run, because if you solely focus on the run, Mark Andrews has that ability, like I said, to get down there behind linebacker depth. So it's not going to kill you in terms of
we put Edmonds on him or something. Like we have like a little spy or just someone almost doubling him a little bit.
Well, and this is the thing, though. So this is why I talk about why I'm nervous about it, because that thought process, you still want to spy Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
So you're running out of personnel.
So what are you thinking then? Could you do that with TJ and Bud somehow, some way?
You can,
like almost like a QB contain in Madden.
This the it's all good.
I'm just telling you.
No, this is the thing though. So you have a couple of ways in terms of if you were gonna implement a spy, which I don't think they will spy out the gate. You turn to a spy if you can't keep Lamar in the pocket, right? You have one or two of these rushes and he takes off. Coaches are going to say, hey, look, I'm not dealing with this. We're going to have a spy. Now, the different ways you could do a spy is this. So you can have it where you just typically have your 4-man rush and you, since they're playing cover one anyways, with cover one, you have your 2 linebackers on one of the running backs, right? So one guy's going to be free. Instead of him being the low defender where he's looking to help out in coverage, that defender would just solely focus in on Lamar. You can do that in cover one. Now, if you start trying to switch the coverages up, now you're going to be shorter, man. So you really, when you do spy, it kind of forces you to just play one or some very one-off style zone coverages that really you don't want to do a lot of, right? Then the other thing you can do is have TJ or Bud simply say, all right, we're going to have a 3-man rush, and you just sit at the line of scrimmage. Wherever he goes, you follow him. That's good for the spot, but for the rush, it kind of sucks because you only got 3 guys. So now you're not getting the pressure on him that you want. So now on the back end, you got to cover a lot longer. So that's why I say, like, it's very challenging. It's not as cut and dry as, well, just play assignment football. They run zone read. We got this and there, because there's certain things that they can't do to really stress out our defense. But the thing is, we do have the athletes, and that's the biggest saving grace. But for me, you have to contain Lamar. So I think it's more so on Bud and TJ, because they're going to allow those guys to rush, especially early on. They're going to say, hey, go out here and rush. Be smart. Be smart, meaning don't run all, the old school Bud where he run the hoop around the quarterback. None of that. Also, you can't do a whole bunch of these jumping inside things because you're not going to have it contained. Who can get outside the pocket. So with Bud and TJ, there's going to have to be very disciplined in terms of when they're rushing. All right, if I'm quarterback level, meaning if I'm 4 or 5 yards deep and I'm eye to eye with him or at the same level of him, I can't go past that because it's going to give him a natural escape lane. For your interior D lineman, Cam into it, because this pertains more so to your sub package ball, right? Whereas for D lineman, with Cam into it, y'all can't get a situation where both of y'all end up on the same side of the ball, meaning if the center is right here, Cam and Tuitt are both on the left side of that center or both on the right side, because once again, natural escape lane for Lamar. So you really have to be disciplined in terms of how you rush him, but you don't want to not rush him because then he's going to have forever and put a lot of strain on your secondary. So that's why we're saying, man, it's very unique. But it could go really good or it could go really bad. And that's the only thing that makes me a little uneasy when we're talking about just our defense against their offense. Because of Lamar's ability to run, we haven't seen a team where their quarterback is this content with running.
He's their best runner. You look at their stat sheet, he has the most rushing. I don't know if overall,
I know it was the case last year. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, because whenever I'm looking back at some of the games, like he's the leader in rushing yards game in and game out. So I'm assuming he does have the most rushing yards on the team because they do use 3 different running backs. Right. But yeah, every game that I've watched, it just seems like he's been the difference maker in the running game. Absolutely. Where he's doing the play action, whatever, and then he's able to run for 10 yards. And they
have legit designed QB keepers and stuff for him.
Those are their best runs. Hey, I don't know what his yards per carry is, but I think it's over 6 or something like that. So yeah, it is the most interesting thing. And one of the things, I think you mentioned this, that has brought Lamar problems is just rushing him though. Whenever you get the pressure, right? But then that's the delicate thing of, all right, you get the pressure, but then you might be leaving one side of the field wide open, or just like maybe some type of level of the field open where he could easily get the 10 to 15 yards if he's able to escape that. So it's like, all right, the rush, the contain, the spy. It's like it's a delicate balance of all that stuff.
Absolutely. So that's why I'm like, it's never as cut and dry as, just leave a spy out there. Because when you do that, you're either taking one guy from the rush or you're taking a guy out of coverage. And if you take a guy out of coverage, you're isolating what you can do from a coverage standpoint. And I mean, at the NFL level, if I know this is what you're going to be doing, because we're going to find out their thought process in that first quarter. If it's no spy, if it's all right, we're going to use a spy, and we'll know, like I said, really soon. It doesn't take long for teams to really tip their hand. Then from there, it's like, all right, what are you going to do once they figure that out and start to combat that? You know what I mean? And that's the whole chess match, the back and forth that you're going to have to go through. And that's what makes it so unique and why I'm so excited about the matchup, because with Lamar bringing that element that chess match just goes to a whole nother level. Whereas last week it was more so, it's very simple what to do. It's just more so the physical element. This week, it's more so mentally, man. It's going to stress you in terms of doing your assignment. And then in terms of, all right, we've done our assignment. We got them on the ground. Now they've changed to this. How do we combat that element of it? So I'm excited, man.